Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. My name is Sarah Reed, and I am the Program Manager for the Climate Mayor's EV Purchasing Collaborative at the Electrification Coalition. We have a great lineup of speakers today, and if you have any questions during the webinar, please put them into the chat box or the question and answer box. We will answer them throughout and then also at the end of the webinar. The webinar is being recorded and slides and the recording will be available following today's presentation. So in addition to Jared Walker from the EC, we are joined today by Vanessa Balta-Cook, who is the Sustainability Planner for the City of Winter Park, Florida, and Executive Director of Keep Winter Park Beautiful. Her work mainly focuses on implementing the city's Sustainability Action Plan and working towards Keep America Beautiful's goals to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify America's communities. She joined the city in May 2017 after finishing a research fellowship that studied local government sustainability programs. She has a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Central Florida, a culinary degree from the San Diego Culinary Institute, and a bachelor's in environmental studies from Florida International University. Winter Park's continued commitment to sustainability efforts has resulted in various recognitions and awards, including SoulSmart's Gold designation, America in Bloom's Outstanding Achievement Award for Community Involvement and Beautification, and Keep America Beautiful's President's Circle Award for exemplary performance in creating a clean, green, and beautiful community. Following Vanessa, we'll hear from Ed Kane, who is the President of Government and Commercial Leasing Divisions at D&M Leasing. Ed joined D&M Leasing in 2017 to capture the government and commercial opportunities available. Ed has had a 30-year career in the leasing and fleet management industry and held senior leadership positions with Enterprise Fleet Management and Lease Plan. Ed's experience lies in new market development, building sales organizations, and creating operational efficiencies. We're very excited to have both of these speakers today. So now I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Jared, to get us started.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And quick shout out and congratulations to Sarah's recent award of one of the top 30 under 30 professionals from GreenBiz. So just a quick shout out there.
Thank you,
thanks everybody for joining today. I'm really excited about today's webinar. Part of our webinar is actually the kind of announcing the release of the Winter Park case study that we recently published. That case study can be found on our website at electrificationcoalition.org. And really excited to get into it. So as Sarah said, yeah, we've got some great folks on today. So with that, I'm going to dive into it. Some of the folks maybe have seen some of these slides before. Just going to give a quick overview of the collaborative and just some kind of updates. And then we'll hand it over to Vanessa. And then Vanessa's got some information to share, some EV strategy, lessons learned, some real on-the-ground experience from Winter Park in implementing electric vehicles in the city fleet there. And then we'll hand it over to Ed to discuss the collaborative and some of the benefits of leasing through the collaborative and specifically through D&M Leasing. And of course, if there's any questions, feel free, like Sarah said, throw them in the chat box. We'll answer them as we can, and then we've saved some time at the end just for a general discussion and questions and answers. Just kind of a quick overview, some programs that the Electrification Coalition is working on currently. We are the technical lead of the Climate Mayor's EV Purchasing Collaborative that's specific to this webinar, and so we're working with about 400 or so cities, counties, and their municipalities around the country to help them to implement electric vehicles in their fleets. We have a lot of benefits to that, lowered price of the vehicles, greater number of vehicles that they have, that cities will have access to, and we're able to offer that across the country. We're also the advisor on the Bloomberg American Cities Climate Challenge program, which has been tremendously successful, working with a number of cities there, highlighted here. We are the lead electrification partner, Smart Columbus, City of Atlanta. We have a partnership there, Drive Electric Northern Colorado, Rochester EV Accelerator, and a number of other programs we have going on. So this is one that's very exciting. We're working at the state level now and sort of building from our work with cities and using a lot of that on the ground city work to help advise some of the state policy work to help with the adoption of electric vehicles for municipal fleets, and very exciting. So that's one of our newer programs for this year. Just a little bit of background about the Purchasing Collaborative. We are designed to help accelerate the electrification of public fleets across the country. And here's our website. If anybody has not been to the website, check it out, driveevfleets.org. There's a lot of great resources out there, and you can access the vehicle pricing. We've got charging stations and a lot of resources out there. So please do check out the website. Some of the benefits that, or some of the real focus that we have through the collaborative is, as I mentioned, increasing the procurement choice. So we're able to allow cities that would not necessarily be able to access some of the less common electric vehicles that are maybe only found very commonly in states like California and New York, ZEV states. We can actually access those for everybody. And so we can make those vehicles available across the country. We're reducing the administrative time by going through Sourcewell. Their cities are able to avoid having to go out to bid on that process of procuring the electric vehicles, as well as charging stations and the other equipment that is out there. And there's a significant benefit to that. Again, aggregating that national demand. So basically sending a very strong message to the EV industry and to manufacturers that there's a huge opportunity with cities and city fleets. And there's a lot of excitement about the new electric pickup trucks that are coming. Any of the municipal folks that are on will know, the number of light duty pickup trucks in their fleets is very significant. And so that is one of the things that we're really focused on driving forward as well. Some things that we're able to offer through the collaborative, it's of course our staff and expertise. We've been in this space for about a decade at this point. So we've got a pretty deep bench of professionals that are very experienced with electrification and really just general strategy for fleets. So we can help with that. We're able to analyze the current fleet. We'll kind of get into some of that in Vanessa's part, where we're just kind of looking at finding those best opportunities for electrification, identifying those vehicles, and really maximizing the benefits of electrification, which of course we've got at least 56% reduction in fuel costs, but then also as well the reduced maintenance costs is significant. So we've through the collaborative been able to reach really cost parity on a number of our sedans with traditional gas cars, and that's really critical. That is sort of a turning point as we see within the industry, and we're building on that success. So just a couple of screenshots here, what you can look at on the website, again, driveevfleets.org. We're able to compare vehicles. We can look at the prices and the different, we've got some different resources out there to help cities to understand sort of some of the complexities that might be involved with going down the road of electrification. So to date, we've got 201 cities, counties, ports, and universities committed to procuring electric vehicles in the next year or two. That's very significant. That accounts for, as you can see, 3,512 light-duty electric vehicles committed, and then to date we're about half of that actually procured. So we're on track to hit that number and actually go surpass that 3,500 number for sure. Just some examples, sort of what it looks like on the website. We've got some prices there. We're able to access the federal tax credit, which is really the linchpin of a lot of where the savings are coming from. And one of the very unique aspects of the collaborative that really nobody else is able to offer. And it's something that I get very excited about because it is such a unique and innovative approach to reducing the cost of electric vehicles. And obviously for cities and municipalities that are not tax burdened, that's a huge deal that they normally wouldn't be able to access that money, and they would be leaving that money on the table. We're able to recoup that for them, and Ed will get into a little bit of that later. Some new additions, course, we have school buses out there. We're getting some more models soon coming out there available. And if anybody joined us on the last webinar, we featured Global and MadVac electric street sweepers, which are very quiet. That was a fun webinar and something a little bit different that you don't normally see. Again, here's the case study. So we're actively putting a number of case studies out there, really trying to put a lot of on-the-ground experience and put that forward for other cities to be able to leverage. So we've got a number of resources like that, like the Winter Park case study out there, and so far it's been really helpful. So please do check those out. And with that, I will turn it over to Vanessa to take it from there.
Thanks, Jared. I think everyone can see my screen there, yeah? And then I'll go ahead and make that large. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate Jared and everyone at the Electrification Coalition inviting us to share our case study. Thanks for all the work that was done on it. My name is Vanessa. I'm with the City of Winter Park. As was mentioned by Sarah, I've been there for over 3 years now. I myself drive a Prius Prime plug-in electric vehicle, so I was very excited to be working on EVs and trying to help our city move forward with more fleet electrification as possible. And I will just kind of jump in. With the city in general, Winter Park is the northeast neighbor of the city of Orlando in Orange County. Our land area is just 8.69 square miles, which makes us kind of perfect for EVs. Our population is about 30,000, so we're a relatively small city, and we have about 12,000 households. Winter Park is known for its beautiful green spaces. We have a very extensive tree canopy that folks come just to see. And we have a beautiful chain of lakes that people will visit who are locals, as well as folks from outside of even the state. So we're really well known also for our quaint brick streets, which you can see in that photo. And this photo is actually of Park Avenue, where we have lots of shopping destinations and beautiful dining experiences, as well as city parks. So the top employers, just to give you an idea, are Winter Park Memorial Hospital, Rollins College, Orange County Public Schools, City of Winter Park, Publix, and Bonnier. So a lot of opportunities, I think, for fleet electrification. And, you know, we are going to try to do our best to be, to provide a good example for folks and to also just be a resource for any folks in our community who are interested in electrifying their fleet. So we passed a sustainability action plan in 2015. And with that, we adopted 7 categories that encompass everything from buildings, energy, water, and conservation to waste diversion. And so we track different kind of metrics and actions. So related to electric vehicles, I've put up these high-level kind of objectives that were conceptually approved by the City Commission. That conceptually approved is actually very important. For us, we did not pass any kind of code updates or comprehensive plan updates, and that has proved difficult in terms of passing ordinances as well as passing new policies because it's not something that's really built into our code. So that would be definitely a recommendation if you are in the middle of updating any of those, is to kind of, even at the very least, put a couple ideas of even connecting air quality to vehicles, and that being an important priority for the city. So the ones that we track related to EVs are in our mobility and urban form category is to increase electric vehicle charging stations. We also have a couple suggested actions, and you know, as I'm sure many of you know, these plans are kind of just there to guide. They're not, you know, exactly what we will do. And then, sorry, the second one is to create a rebate and or code for utilization of EV charging for renovated buildings. And that was kind of in our buildings section of our sustainability action plan. And then the last one is to develop a green city fleet maintenance program and to begin replacing older vehicles with more efficient vehicles. And that's within our local government operations category. So just to kind of give a little info on how we are on those three, in terms of increasing electric vehicle charging stations, we have electric vehicle charging stations right on that map there, the little bolts. Those are the different locations of our stations. All of them are level 2 charging stations. Most of them are ChargePoint networked units, which has been very useful for us to have that level of data. We've had commissioners ask, you know, what is the usage like? And it's been great to be able to pull that data. Obviously, these systems are more expensive, but it's been very useful to be able to have that level of data. These are actually all offered free of charge to our residents and visitors, so anyone can use them. We have several that are located near Park Avenue. That was pictured there. This one, the picture on the left there, that's actually at our Amtrak station. And in the last couple of years, we've actually added several, and we have focused on installing these at our city parks because it's a lot easier in terms of permitting and just in general. This is the city's land, so we have a lot more flexibility as opposed to putting it in a private location. So we have 10 public charging stations that equals about 13 ports. In general, we have had several maintenance issues with the ChargePoint system. Some of them at this point are, you know, 5 years old, and we have run into parts going down or not being able to replace the parts because they're no longer under warranty, or they've even stopped building those anymore, so we can't access them. So we've had several issues, and we don't have necessarily somebody on our facilities team who does that. So it's myself who I have to figure out, okay, how can we fix this, and how much is it going to be? So we, as a result of that, are looking at more open network stations. So not necessarily ChargePoint, but other kind of stations that allow you to potentially bring down the cost of the network service that you have to go with ChargePoint with every year. Maybe we can bring that down, and also more durable stations. The ChargePoint stations are very pretty to look at, but they have a lot of openings that make it you know, susceptible here down in Florida to heat, humidity, and rain, and they've really, you know, taken a beating, unfortunately, in our environment. So it's something that we're definitely considering when we're replacing these. Is, you know, is this someplace that we need ChargePoint, or should we go with something else? The other part about kind of creating some kind of a code that would allow for electric vehicle charging in renovated buildings or new buildings, we've drafted actually an EV readiness ordinance that will essentially require a percentage of our parking spaces to include some kind of electrical infrastructure that would allow for people to charge there or to install an EV charging station. Recently, we've started collaborating with the City of Orlando and Orange County, our neighbors, to create the ordinance so that it, you know, so they actually complement each other, and so as to make it easier for our contractors that are working in our city and their city and county, so that it's not, you know, so confusing. So we're looking forward to getting that out, hopefully at the end of the year, beginning of next year. I'd be happy to talk to anybody further about this. You know, here in Florida, our building code requires us to pass a technical amendment, so it's not as easy as, you know, just doing it on the commercial side with a land development code ordinance, which we will also have to do. But we are looking at this ordinance not only to impact commercial development, but also residential. Our draft currently includes EV capable requirements for all new single family homes without a garage. 20% of parking spaces for new multifamily and non-residential without garages would need to be EV capable. And there's a little graphic there that kind of goes into the differences between EV capable, EV ready, and EVSC installed. So EV ready, we're going to make that required for all single family with garages, and 20% for new multifamily and non-residential garages. Obviously multifamily with garages, and then EVSC installed, that is a minimum number of level 2 EV charging stations for development of a certain intensity. So any development that would require 50 plus parking spaces, 2% of the parking spaces must have level 2 charging stations. So we're looking forward to bringing that back up to the commission at the end of the year. So to get to the fleet electrification, we have been trying to increase the amount of electric vehicles in our city. So we began fall 2017 with a purchase of a Ford Focus EV. There were definitely some concerns in regards to realizing a return on investment on the purchase. Our fleet manager was concerned basically about whether or not we were ever going to make our money back on it. There was also the issue of new user behavior. So these folks had never driven an EV before. So, you know, I remember walking by the Ford Focus at one point in the parking lot, and it was running. And I was like, what is that? And I realized really quickly, well, it's really hot in Florida, and it seems like folks don't like to turn off the car because it'll get too warm. So that's definitely another kind of major policy change that we would have to kind of enforce. It's in there. That one actually does exist, but it's not as enforced. So that can also impact the performance of your EV, just leaving it running. So we had some issues where, you know, they ran out of, you know, quote unquote gas, but, you know, they ran out of electric and had to be, like, you know, pushed down to the city hall. Fortunately, it's a very small city, so it didn't take very long. But still, you know, that's kind of what we dealt with the first one. So it kind of got quiet for a while because I don't think it was the best welcome for an EV. I don't know if it was the best fit, to be honest, that particular EV. But in the last year, in August, our city commission was going through the budget, and essentially when they mentioned the number of cars that they were going to replace, we had commissioners who said that they wanted some of these to be EVs, and in the end said we want at least 2 of the 14 that are going to be replaced to be electric vehicles. So at that moment, I immediately reached out to Jared with the Electrification Coalition because we had heard great things from our friends in Coral Gables, as well as Orlando and other folks that are part of the Florida Sustainability Directors Network on their work with the Electrification Coalition. We are not a part of the Climate Mayors Collaborative, so it was great to be able to actually reach out to Jared and feel like we were still being supported, even though we have not made those commitments. So Jared gave us a lot of info. We had questions about what kinds of vehicles were available. Obviously, you know, a lot of these folks in the Building and Permitting Services Department, they were used to larger vehicles. So, you know, we definitely had interest in a larger vehicle at first. What also then happened was that Jared introduced us to Ed, and Ed was great in terms of just giving us information on this opportunity through their leasing program to realize some gains in terms of what we would save by going with them versus the regular contract. In the end, it was about $1,200 per vehicle, which really helped us, be able to say, well, that money can go towards the cost of a charging station or something else. So it was great to connect with Ed. He provided, all the options in terms of what was available through them, as well as quotes, back and forth. We had a lot of emails going back and forth. And then in September 2019, our commission did approve the budget, and the budget included the purchase of 5 EVs, which was 3 more than what they had requested. So that was great, and it also included the cost of the charging stations. So other than that, so then we connected Ed to our procurement director and our finance director, which is totally key because I didn't have all the answers that they needed. And Ed was really great, and he answered every single question. I can remember the emails, literally him going point by point and answering them. So that was very helpful because our finance and procurement folks had never seen this before, and so they were a little weary about saying yes to it. Then by February, we were finally in contract with D&M for the leasing of the 5 Nissan Leafs. COVID has impacted the delivery of our vehicles a bit, but we should be getting them by end of July, early August, and we're finalizing our quotes for the charging station. So we're pretty excited about that. Just to really quickly wrap up, so kind of lessons learned, you know, adopted versus accepted. I kind of mentioned that, you know, very important to have these things kind of in your code. It'll just help in general. And if you are at a point where you have an opportunity to update your comprehensive plan, definitely, you know, have that conversation with those folks. Smart versus not so smart EV charging stations. Again, just the benefit of being able to really quickly pull from a dashboard the data has been really helpful. It is a cost though. It's, you know, significantly more. So something to definitely consider. The new user training program, it's not something that we have, but I think it's something that is worth developing, and if not, at least finding one that is online or something like that that we can share with our folks to get better acquainted with EVs. And then just be prepared for resistance, because not necessarily, change is not great for everybody necessarily, and they might not be as open to it, so just kind of prepare for that. And then lastly, just open up that communication between experts. You know, I'm not an expert in the leasing structure, so that's why I'm going to turn it over to Ed because he knows how to do that. But you know, my finance director and my procurement director, they could talk to Ed and they could understand each other. So I'll leave it at that. I look forward to any questions, and with that, I will turn it over to Ed.
Well, thank you very much, Vanessa. And I'd like to start out by saying I was pretty excited to have the opportunity to work with the City of Winter Park, because that's actually my hometown. So when they reached out to us, I thought, oh, this will be wonderful. So I just want to give everybody a little bit of a background about who D&M is and what it is that we do. D&M is a leasing and fleet management company, which essentially means that we have programs and processes that allow us to manage every aspect of acquiring and operating a vehicle over its entire life cycle. So D&M specializes in working with both commercial and government fleets. As far as government fleets, we work with state agencies, municipalities, universities, ISDs, water systems, river authorities, you name it, we work with them. We are an awarded vendor for leasing and fleet management through Sourcewell, through their cooperative, which truly is the key to all of this. Everybody can feel good about the fact that D&M has been vetted by Sourcewell, and we meet all the required procurement that any governmental entity would need to be able to check off. So we've already been through that, so you can feel good about utilizing us. When we started working with the climate mayors and the Electrification Coalition, the main crux of what we were trying to do was figure out how we could pass through the federal tax credit through to the cities, because obviously federal tax credits, if anybody has kept up with those, they can run upwards of $7,500. So in the traditional purchasing scenario, the cities weren't able to go ahead and access that those federal tax credits. So what we did is we put together a program that was going to allow us to monetize the federal tax credits and be able to pass that through to the city up front. And so these federal tax credits, as I was saying, can range upwards of $7,500. And if in a, well, I was going to say in a standard scenario, like what we were doing for the City of Winter Park, With a Nissan Leaf, a federal tax credit runs up to $7,500. And we pass through 67% of that federal tax credit, which equates to $5,025. Now, you all may wonder why we're only passing through 67% of the federal tax credit. And it's because it's going to take us about 18 months before we're going to be able to recoup that federal tax credit from the government. So we're going to front that $5,025 to the city of Winter Park. In addition, they're going to also be able to have access to there's government incentives that are available on vehicles. So with the Nissan Leaf, there's a $4,000 government incentive that's available as well. You can also access, if they're state or local incentives, those can be passed through as well. But what we've got up here on the screen is where we have taken the 2020 Nissan Leaf, and you'll see what we've done is we've broken it down on lease payments based off of either 24, 36, 48, or 60 months. Now, the type of lease that we're offering, it's called a municipal lease. And a municipal lease is designed strictly for government as a way of funding purchases over time versus paying cash. So in today's economic climate with budget cuts looming, a municipal lease allows fleets to continue to acquire vehicles based upon their needs without a large outlay of capital as a purchase would be. So these leases, as you can see, what we're showing here on the screen is what a 2020 Nissan Leaf would be with the federal tax credit of $5,025 taken off, also with the $4,000 government incentive taken off. And if you want to go ahead and pay for this over a 24-month term and pay it down to $1, then your monthly payment would be $976. At the end of the lease period, the city gets to take ownership of that. You're going to get title and you're going to have ownership to it. So this mimics what a city would be doing if they just went out to fund a vehicle through a bank. So it's about as clean and clear cut as you can possibly get. A municipal lease is something that is designed strictly for governments. And as I was saying, it's that transfer of ownership is probably the biggest thing that we've heard that cities are requesting or that they're looking for. And sorry, my phone keeps beeping. So they wanted to have something that was going to be very clear cut, and they didn't want to have anything that was going to be confusing. So that municipal lease allows the city to go ahead and get that transfer of ownership at the end of the term, pay for it, and customize it based upon what their needs are. So the city of Winter Park has chosen to do a 24-month lease, and they want to go ahead and pay all 24 monthly payments up front. So they're going to mimic a purchase by just writing one big check and doing it. But we also have cities that have entered into a lease with us, and they say, we don't have the cash to be able to do it right now. We want to be able to hold to our commitment of what we're trying to do with electric vehicles. So we'd like to do a traditional 36-month lease, and we don't even want to pay it down to $1. We want to pay it down to a 20% balance. And then at the end of 3 years, what we'll do is we'll take that vehicle and sell it for them, and then they can go ahead and get a new vehicle if they want. But it's spread out the monthly payments. The very nice thing about a municipal lease is there are no mileage restrictions. There's no wear and tear penalties. So it's going to be just like paying cash for it. So treat these vehicles the way you want to treat them. That's pretty much it about that. I think we've got another slide here, but once again, I think I've covered most of those points, but just to let you know that we have access to any kind of make or model of vehicle. So it's really anything that the city is looking for. And what we like to do is, as a fleet management provider, we're not looking to just fund the vehicles for you. We're looking to help you walk through the decision about what type of vehicles are going to be best suited for you, what the best funding options are going to look like for you. We do the initial licensing and registration for you. We've got all sorts of different programs that we can make available to you, from telematics to anything else. But we'll do as much or as little as you want us to do, but we're going to be there for you throughout the lease term and the period. So at the, in a few years, when the city of Winter Park wants to get rid of these vehicles, if they want us to, we'd be more than happy to step in and help them sell the vehicles, or they can sell them on their own. A few questions that people normally have is, can I put decals on them? Where do I have to take them to have them maintained? Some other things like who handles the insurance? These are going to be your vehicles, just like any other vehicle that you would have in your fleet. So you're going to treat it the same exact way. You're going to, the manufacturer's warranties are going to be applicable to what you have. If you want to get them worked on, you could either take them back to the dealership, or you could have your own shop work on it. You can decal them. You can do whatever you want to with these vehicles. They're yours. So I think that concludes what I had to talk about. And
yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Ed. I really appreciate it. We do have some questions in there, but I did want to just kind of hit a few things just as we were going through the slides with Vanessa and Ed. I just wrote down a few notes really quick, and to step back to what Vanessa was talking about, a couple of things to highlight. So she mentioned level 2 network charging stations, and that indeed is what we also recommend at the Electrification Coalition. So it's not mandatory that you have a network connection, for your charging station, but if possible, it is advisable. And exactly like Vanessa was saying, just to kind of echo that, the ability to track the expenses, to track the charging uses, to track the electric, bill basically of those vehicles, it adds so much ability for reporting. And you can then also report on how much you're saving, because that is your, reduced fuel spend right there. But also a lot of cities have different fleets for different departments. And one of the nice things by having those network charging stations, you can deploy fewer charging stations as an overall city strategy, but then allow different RFID cards for the different departments to access those stations. So you can more accurately bill to each department if that's necessary. So just a really, I think a really good sort of on the ground example of, you can spend a little bit more. They are a little bit more expensive, but the capability that they come with really adds a lot of flexibility and the ability to then build out a larger electric fleet over time. Another thing I mentioned, or I wrote down here, an internal champion. Vanessa is an easy example for me to point to as an internal champion. Every city that we have that is successful in their programs in deploying electric vehicles has someone like Vanessa that is willing to run the calculations, understand a little bit more about how much can we save, and really approach this from an economic standpoint. There's a lot of interest in the air quality, the climate impacts, and the reduced dependence on foreign oil that comes with the electric vehicles. But if we approach it from an economic standpoint, we can really see where we can really save and how best to implement the vehicles for the most savings. And that really speaks volumes. And so I just wanted to thank you, Vanessa, for all of your work being that internal champion and allowing us to spotlight your work there in Winter Park. One other thing, collaboration. You mentioned Orlando. We work very closely with Orlando. One of the slides I hit on earlier was the American Cities Climate Challenge work that we do. And so that's another aspect too. Working locally with your other local partners can be a huge benefit where you're really able to kind of pull those resources together. So that's huge. And then your EV Ready example of 2% charging stations, 20% wired. So that we recommend that as well. And that's actually what the city of Atlanta adopted several years ago, where all new construction should be 20% of the parking lots should be wired with conduit for charging stations. 2% of the new parking spots should have charging stations deployed there. And that really is critical as we build out this, the future of transportation. So with that, I'll hop into the questions. Our friend Dory, I see, has posted a question out there in the Q&A. I saw there was one.
Yeah, she's asking, is there a 12-month lease available? I think that one's to Ed.
I'll hand that over to Ed to answer that one. Is there a 12-month lease available through D&M, Ed?
No, there's not. And the reason for that is it's going to take us about 18 months to be able to recoup that federal tax credit. And because it takes 18 months for that, we need to have that structured as a lease during that time for us to be able to apply for it and receive it. So that's why we have the minimum of the 24-month term. And one of the things that I think has that I just want to reiterate that Vanessa did, she really was the champion for the city of Winter Park, but she very quickly brought in procurement and finance for them to ask their questions and understand it. And we've worked with a lot of cities that the sustainability person has actually been a great champion, and they've actually gotten it all the way through the city council and gotten approval, but they never really fully explained that this was a lease. And so then when procurement got it or finance got it and even legal got it, they said, well, why do we even have to sign a lease? We shouldn't have to sign a lease contract. We're paying cash for this vehicle, because the way it had been sold was one payment all the way up front to make it easy and just go ahead and write out 24 months worth of payments. So I think it is very critical to go ahead and have everybody be on the same page and understand that it has to be structured as a lease for us to be able to get that federal tax credit and pass it through to the city.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Ed. And just to kind of underscore something that you were hitting on in your slides there, is a lot of cities opt to, like Winter Park, they opt to manage this kind of like a purchase, in that they're paying everything, all of the costs up front. So you're really just not taking ownership technically at the DMV level for 2 years, 24 months, but you do actually own that vehicle for the most part. And so just to kind of clarify, you know, it's not as much a long-term rental as it is a mechanism to access the federal tax credit and those savings. So there's...
Can I say one thing about that? A municipal lease, as I was saying, it is for government entities only. So it was structured based upon the IRS, and a lot of municipalities use a municipal lease to either fund construction projects or maybe somebody's looking to buy major pieces of equipment, and they just can't afford to go ahead and write a check for it. It's not in their capital budget. So that municipal lease allows them to go ahead and structure this and pay for it over time. But technically, the city is the owner of the vehicle at all times. We're just not passing through the title until the lease term is up. But you are considered, the city is considered the owner of the vehicle. And that's a key tenet of a municipal lease.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. I think that adds a lot of clarity to it, and you know, it speaks to the flexibility that we can access, you know, through the Climate Mayors program. So there's another question here about cost parity. So the question is the cost parity full cost or upfront cost? I would say the full cost is less on the electric vehicle, and we're actually, you know, calculating the reduced fuel spend and then also significantly reduced maintenance with these. And then the cost parity that I was referencing really was more the upfront cost. So if you remember the slide that we had up when Ed was talking there, the cost of a standard 4-door sedan for a city is right in around what is the cost for that Nissan Leaf for a city typically. So that's kind of where we're saying, when we're reaching cost parity with a traditional gas car, that's not even before we, start recouping the significant savings on fuel and maintenance. So I hope that adds a little bit more context there. We got the 12-month lease. Municipal leases on electric medium-duty trucks and delivery vans. The tricky thing is just really access to those. I'll hand it over to Ed to talk a little bit more about the ability to, to structure a lease on a truck or a delivery van.
D&M can lease any make or model vehicle. So when we deal with cities, it can be a piece of yellow iron that they want to lease, or it could be a sanitation truck. It could be all sorts of different things. And we don't just lease electric vehicles. So we lease everything. So I am quite honestly not incredibly versed on what kind of federal tax credits are available on some of that other equipment. But if there's a federal tax credit that's available on any type of vehicle, we'll pass it through.
Perfect. Yeah. So there is a lot of flexibility there. I think at this point we're seeing, finally, we're seeing a little bit more options in terms of the different models of electric vehicles. And so those are coming quickly. So we're excited to be able to include those as soon as they are available, from major manufacturers to purchase, factory order these vehicles. There's a question about a new RFP that has been issued. So the way that Sourcewell works is they will keep all of the bids, all of the contracts and everything like that is checked out and is available. So anything that's out there listed on the website is available through Sourcewell. And so you'll be able to, you'll avoid having to go out to bid on anything that runs through the Sourcewell program or Climate Mayors. And that is a significant benefit of the program, in fact. There's one other one here, the garage and without garage distinction. Could Vanessa explain the garage and without garage distinction? I think that might be for charging stations, I want to say.
I think it was regarding our EV readiness ordinance, and I did respond in there. And basically, when we're saying with a garage, just think about a single family home that actually has a garage, where we could actually put an outlet, as opposed to a single family home that does not have a garage. So that would be a little different. And then the same thing goes for a multifamily, something like a townhome that has a attached garage versus, like a vertical condo that might not have any parking garage.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks so much. That can be a challenge dealing with multi-unit dwellings for charging. And a lot of times we see that's where the benefit of having like a workplace charging situation can really benefit for a lot of folks that want to get into having more EVs.
Jared, I just wanted to mention too that if any of the cities do want to roll the cost of the charging station into the lease for the vehicles, and they want to do one-to-one or anything like that, we'd be more than happy to do that as well. So we can fund the charging station along with the vehicles. We fund the vehicles first. That has to be a component of it. But if you want to go ahead and get charging stations in addition to it, then we can do that as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a huge benefit, of course, now, especially with budget challenges and everything that we're dealing with. And to kind of piggyback off of that as well, through Sourcewell, there is some special Climate Mayors pricing for the charging stations. So cities are able to get a 20 or 30% cost reduction as a savings through the Climate Mayors. There's some special pricing out there. So anybody that's interested, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm more than happy to send over the breakdown there. We work with a number of different charging station vendors and providers, and so would be more than happy to kind of talk through that strategy and how we could leverage that for a city. Looks like there's another question here for Vanessa. Is there any one cause of EVSE failures more common than others? Vandalism, or is there any value to the city for the ChargePoint service? And that's from Brian. Hey, Brian.
So some of them, I think, really were just the humidity. Like you would notice in the little screens, there'd be water inside of them. And so I think that didn't help. We did actually have some vandalism. Somebody shooting up EVSEs with a BB gun. I mean, very odd. So fortunately, that doesn't help either. It just kind of creates even larger gaps. But not so much the vandalism. I think it's just actually the way that they were built. We had much older ChargePoint stations out there, and I think they just have so many gaps and so many places for air, water, humidity to impact it. So some of the newer ones we're looking at really don't have those gaps at all. They're not as pretty, but they, you know, we want these things to last. We don't want to have to replace these every 4 years or something like that. Was there any value to the city for the ChargePoint service? Absolutely. They have a really nice dashboard that you can go online and get this data, you know, as either CSV, so you can manipulate it, or you can also just download graphs. Literally within seconds. It's, you know, saved me so much time. So I do love the ChargePoint dashboard. I do not love how expensive they are compared to others and their network service plans. And unfortunately, we had the bad experience of the earlier models just not being as reliable as we would want them to, and long lasting. But I do like the ChargePoints.
That's great. Yeah, thanks so much, Vanessa. We actually are working with another city here in the Southeast that has a full ChargePoint system set up. So all of their charging stations are ChargePoint. And now, as we're building more of this this whole really citywide charging network, we're keeping it to ChargePoint, having just that one single vendor, so that we're allowing access for, at this point, actually, there's some interest from at the state level, you know, for some of the folks at the state level to charge their vehicles on it and be able to track all of those things. So I think that, like, to kind of reiterate what you're saying there about the access to being able to track all of that is really a nice feature. So kind of streamlines a lot of that.
Yeah, and the new systems that we're looking at, they also have like an open source version. I think it's like in the other one that we're looking at, I think it's called Green Lots or something like that. So they also have a dashboard, maybe not as pretty, but it's pretty. So we are going to be, and it's smart, so that's what we need is data. So, you know, that's kind of one of our options that we're looking at is going with a different unit and network service.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. That's all the questions I see out there. Unless there are any other ones, you know, feel free to reach out to us. We've got our contact information there. If anybody's interested in learning more about how to access vehicles or charging stations, or you know, any of the services that are available through the collaborative, feel free to reach out to me directly. That's my cell phone. I'm always available.
Jared, I would just like to, if anybody's got any questions that about anything that I discussed today, most of it is covered on our website that you'll see there. We've dmdriveevfleets.org. So if you'll just click on that, we kind of walk you through the whole process. That's where all the pricing is updated, why you would want to lease the vehicles versus not, any kind of stumbling questions or anything that might come up as you're trying to introduce this to procurement or finance. So it's got a lot of those kind of things on there that you can get answers to. So I highly recommend that people go to our website. It's strictly for the Climate Mayor's Electrification Coalition program.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot, Ed. There's a lot of great information out there, and we're always here to assist.
Thanks, Jared. Thank you so much to our speakers today, Vanessa and Ed and Jared. Really appreciate you guys joining us. We will share out the recording and the slides and the new case study that highlights a lot of what Vanessa talked about in a follow-up email. So have a good rest of your day, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.